Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, for watching, listening, following, subscribing. I appreciate y'all very, very much. This is our Friday episode, recording this on a Wednesday afternoon. And if you're watching on the video side, or even if you're listening on the audio, you can probably hear a little bit of chatter in the background. We are recording this live from Imperial Pizza, the heart of South Buffalo, and I am joined by a special guest today, brand new Channel 4 sports reporter and anchor, Carl Jones. Man, what's going on, dude? How you doing? Good to meet you.
Man, first off, I'm very grateful that you invited me to come on.
Yeah.
Heard about you for a while now, so I'm happy that I'm the next guest on here. So I appreciate that, man, and I'm just excited to be here.
I'm happy you're here for a lot of reasons. Number one, because you're new to the media, to this market in Buffalo. Not new to covering the Buffalo Bills, and we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes here. But this is an opportunity. I love these kind of shows because it's my first time meeting you. For a lot of people who are watching and listening, it's going to probably be the first time that they're actually hearing from you. So we'll spend a nice chunk of this episode giving people a chance to learn more about you, your life, your career to this point. And I think it's a very interesting one, unique in a way, too, when it comes to media stuff with your football pass. And again, we'll get into some of that. And like I said, we're here at Imperial Pizza. You are literally brand new to living here in Buffalo. This is one of the first wing spots that you've had, right, here in Buffalo?
Yeah, I would say it's probably third. I've had Duff's years ago.
Yeah.
And then I had Carbones, I think it's called Carbons or whatever, had them. This is up there. I like this spot. I mean, I wasn't complaining. We had some wings beforehand. I had the rants. I'm sorry for the listeners at home if y'all not the biggest rants fans.
Also, you're going to call yourself out for it. I respect that right off the bat.
I'm sorry. I loved it. So I'm saying, but shout out to the wings. They're good here.
Yeah, they're really good here. So we had some honey mustard barbecue on the pit, which is so funny because I don't like honey. I don't like mustard, but I love honey mustard barbecue wings on the pit. We had some medium Cajun. The bomb, always good here at Imperial Pizza. By the way, nice healthy crowd here on a hot Wednesday afternoon, man. It's pretty hot in here.
Listen, I'll take this weather right now because I know in a few months I'm going to be complaining about the temperature. So I'll take 80, whatever this is today. I'll take it.
Now, for people who don't know, like I said, Carl is going to be covering sports here at Channel 4, but you're not really necessarily new to the Buffalo Bills. You're coming over from Rochester. So it's not like you're coming from Florida or California. You're already pretty familiar with Western New York and obviously the sports teams. But let's just actually kind of go back to the beginning here for you. So you are born in Cleveland, native of Cleveland, grew up in Cleveland. Let's start there. Talk about being born in Cleveland and what it was like growing up in Cleveland, which, by the way, and we were talking about this too, kind of had our own little podcast within a podcast while we were in our wings here at Imperial. So I kind of know where you're going with, but you grew up in like the LeBron era where LeBron is almost like God.
Yes.
In the state of Ohio. But just talk about where you grew up and what you did as a kid and stuff.
Yeah, man, Cleveland's not all too different from Western New York. Like grew up, went to college in Syracuse. We'll get to that in a bit. Rochester and now in Buffalo. Like, I know Western New York isn't the Midwest, but I got the same Midwest vibe since I've been here. So just think of the same energy in that regard. Obviously, the LeBron thing was huge as a kid. The Browns weren't good. The Indians at the time were solid, but I think the Yankees knocked them out of the playoffs a few times, so I'm like, or whatever. But then those were the LeBron golden years. He left us one time, as you can imagine. 11, 12-year-old CJ was crying. Didn't like
That's
that.
how old you were when he left?
I was born in 98, so I was about 11 or 12 when he left. And I was torn to shreds, man. I couldn't. Those 4 years he was in Miami, I was his biggest hater on the planet. You can ask any of my friends.
Were you? What?
But then he came back, and I was my favorite player again. So shout out to LeBron. But yeah, those were the golden years as a Clevelander. I enjoyed it, every minute of it. I came right after the Browns came back, so I didn't have to deal with that misery of not having a football team.
I forgot about that.
But yeah, Cleveland was dope. I really enjoyed it. You have the Ohio State Buckeyes right down the road, so it's really football centric. And I think it's the one thing that I always remind anyone when I get up here is that Fridays high school football is king. Saturday afternoons is all Buckeyes, and then Sundays we watch our Browns. So like those 3 days are like it goes God, family, football, and sometimes the third supersedes the one sometimes.
There's a good amount of people from your state here in Buffalo who have supplanted themselves here into the media. Josh at Channel 4, John Scott from Channel 2, who was just here last week. And I know there's other people too that I'm going to draw a blank right now. I know there's at least 2 or other 3 people from Ohio that are in this market currently, or at least semi-pass. But anyway, let's get into some football stuff, because ultimately you played football at a very high level. If folks didn't know this, you played football at Syracuse, a big-time D1 university that a lot of people in Buffalo are obviously very familiar with. But talk about your early days of playing football. Like, when did you get into football? When did you start playing football?
I think I started playing tackle football around 5th or 6th grade, I would say. Dad had me in flag football. I was really a basketball player growing up. I swear I was going to be the next LeBron. Clearly, God didn't bless me in that way when my genetics stopped at 6'2". But regardless.
So sorry.
Yeah. I don't know if I should be talking about stopping at 6'2", like that's the worst thing in the world. But regardless, I really enjoyed football. Loved it from the time I played it. Was fortunate to go out to the west side to a private school and play football out there. And my journey wasn't linear. My first 3 years, I didn't really play as much as I like. I was stuck behind an all-star cast at St. Arrow High School. My junior year, our state championship team, we ended up having, I believe, 22 Division I players. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, I was the X receiver. My slot receiver went to Notre Dame. The other receiver on the other side went to Michigan State. His backup went to Ohio State, but he was out for the year because of a broken foot. It was ridiculous. Like, every position went Division I except, I believe, our center. Or Dayton, excuse me. That's still Division I. So regardless, a little bit of a slow start recruiting wise. Then senior year, all those guys left, and I had the opportunity to play. And Coach Babers, who was at Bowling Green, saw me, and he went from Bowling Green to Syracuse, and that's where I ended up.
And you were a defensive back at Syracuse, but you said wide receiver. So you played offense. When did you start playing corner?
I wanted to play my junior year, but I talked about how loaded the receivers were.
It was loaded.
The back end was the same way. Nebraska, Youngstown State, Notre Dame, and then Michigan State. So there wasn't a lot of room for me to get in on the defensive side. So I said, I'll sneak in on offense and get my 25 catches for the year, I guess. So I would say probably like week 7 or 8, I started playing defense, and all I needed was 7 or 8 weeks of film for me to show the MAC and Syracuse that I was a Division I caliber corner for sure.
All right, so now it's different for you because you played, whereas I witnessed it. So I was in Florida from 2016 to 2021, and we were talking about this while we're eating here for the show. The level in Florida is absurd. The level in Ohio is the same. I mean, you're describing half your team were D1 players. It's absurd. Talk just what it's like to play on teams where maybe like the fans kind of like take it for granted how good these players are. Like, look, in all due respect, like say Western New York and most regions like this, there's a couple great players that come through here for sure. And the rivalries is what it's all about. You know what I mean? The spirit of the schools. So it still makes a lot of fun to watch the games. But the level of talent is not on par with Florida and Texas and Cali and Ohio. Almost like you grow up around it, you're used to, you almost take it for granted how much talent is around you.
For 100% took it for granted. I mean, but also the tradition and the passion, I would say. And not to say that other parts of the country aren't passionate about football. Being here in Buffalo and Rochester over the past few years, they love football. But there's a different energy and a different vibe to it. Like, I describe my Fridays through Sundays growing up. I'm not kidding when I say we used to tailgate. Well, not me, I was playing. People used to tailgate for high school football games.
It's crazy.
Like, my dad, my 4 o'clock hits, boom. Like, we're in the parking lot, let's get to it. And then that's just the way they treated a Bills game, similar to they would treat my St. Arrow high school football games. And the difference between, I would say, Ohio and those other states, it's more of a physical brand in Ohio, as you can imagine, up north, Midwest, as you can attest to down south. Man, those dudes are flying now. Yeah. They have a mixture of everything in Florida, I would say. So that will be the main difference, I would say. We played against a couple Florida teams. Mainland was one of them, and then Cocoa Beach was another. I think Cocoa Beach, actually, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, there we go. Played against him at Cocoa Beach. Really good player. He came up to Ohio. We ended up beating them, though. Shout out to that win right there. But regardless, very, very fun time of my life, and I would encourage everyone to just go catch a Northeast Ohio game just one time.
What's it like winning a state championship? And whether you're playing at a high level, whether you're a D3 player, whether you're just a high school player and that's your ceiling, it doesn't matter. It don't even matter what sport. I would imagine winning a state championship in whatever sport that you play in, whatever you participate in, has got to be like, especially as a high school kid, like the ultimate feeling. Like, what was that like winning a state title in a great football state like Ohio?
Yeah, man. It's just all the hard work that you put in for all those months. And it's different in high school compared to the other levels, because the older that you get and the higher that you get with your levels, it becomes more business-like.
Right.
And it becomes things of that nature. Like in high school, you grew up with these guys. And I know I went to private school, but I knew a lot of those guys when I was 10, 11, 12, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it hits different when the families all know each other and we all have this tight bond where we're with each other from 7 a.m. until nighttime when we go to sleep. You're spending the night over your teammate's house because you don't want to go back home and things of that nature. So it's just a familial bond that you have when you're 15, 16, 17 years old. Because I was fortunate and blessed enough to do it twice, my junior and senior year. And both of those memories, I'll never forget. Those guys, we always go back home, and they always call us legends back there for that exact reason. And those guys are my brothers for life.
I kind of want to thread the needle a little bit. So we'll be going back and forth between football and sports media. So we're talking about football. I grew up, again, a big LeBron fan, playing football, winning state championships. One thing we have not talked about is what you're doing for a living right now,
right,
and that's media stuff. When you were a young kid, was this something that you envisioned yourself doing? Ended up someday, I'm sure when you're a young kid, you probably imagine you're playing the NFL, like, we all grew up dreaming about. But did you spend time thinking about sports media? Like, was that something that interested you even when you were a young kid?
Shout out to the late, great Stuart Scott. He was my role model as a kid. Outside of, obviously, the fantastic basketball player and football players that I idolized, Richard Sherman, LeBron James, and go down the line with the athletes. But it was really Stuart Scott that gave me an interest to it, because being an African American, I felt as if he spoke about sports and spoke to me as the viewer at home in a way that some of the other people on TV didn't do.
Sure.
And like the way that he would use hip hop references, or the way that he would incorporate pop culture into his sports talk, really gravitated me towards his content in Sports Center every night. Like, I know the late night show with him and SVP, it was always awesome. And I tuned in. So he gave me the keen interest to do so. And then the older I got, Jalen Rose being able to thread the needle between sports media and being a former athlete, and all the other guys, Marcellus Wiley, former Buffalo Bill himself. So all those guys gave me the confidence to be like, hey, hopefully I can pursue this field one day.
So you go to Syracuse to play football. Kind of talk about that process a little bit. I know you talked about the coach in Bowling Green went to Syracuse. Kind of talk about that process, being recruited. I read up on you as much as I can, because even though I'm learning a lot about you, I kind of wanted to do my homework too. I know they had at least a couple offers. I know Army, Air Force, I read up on that. They had interest in you as well. But kind of talk about the process. What led you to going to Syracuse? And did you know when you were in high school that Syracuse, besides being, a great school for athletics, very, very well known for journalism as well?
I'm going to answer that question right there. No idea. I had no idea what a Newhouse was, who a Newhouse was. None of that. I just cared about one day going to the NFL. Mom, I'm sorry, you did not hear that part. But anyways, my recruiting process, as I kind of alluded to earlier, started really late, like very, very late, because of the fact that my team was so stacked. Like, college coaches will say all the time, yeah, we like your measurables, but son, you don't have a lot of tape. And I'm like, well, blame the Notre Dame kid, or blame the Ohio State kid, or blame the 2 Michigan State kids, or the Nebraska kid. Like, I'm going down the line. These are all high power players that I'm playing with. And so you would hit the camp circuit and they're still like, hey man, we like the measurables, but we want to see them on the field. And I got it. I understood it. So it helped out my senior year. We played a national schedule, 2 teams from New Jersey, 2 teams from Florida, a couple teams from PA. So like that helped out a ton. And never forget, played my state championship on a Saturday. I got a phone call from the Bowling Green staff at the time on a Monday. Flew to Syracuse Friday, offered that day, committed the following week, and the rest is history. Some of the MAC schools started coming in after I committed, but by that point I told them, they have a dome, you guys don't, so I'm going to go there.
What were your initial thoughts of Syracuse as a town?
It was a college town, and I think I kind of really appreciated that. Growing up as an Ohio State fan, you get kind of spoiled to a certain extent because Ohio State's in Columbus, which is a major city, and you, to a certain extent, you think that's what college is supposed to be like, which is not. College is supposed to be small, college town vibe. You're the main attraction of the city, and that was really unique for me, and I really enjoyed that because, I mean, you watch the Dukes of the world and the Florida States where the entire city revolves around the university, and Syracuse is like that, and that was really enjoyable to see. And once again, the dome was really, really cool. As a kid, all I saw was the basketball version of it. Really didn't know much about the football side of it. So it was really cool to see that in person, for sure.
Pretty wild, too, that people that are now your colleagues here in Buffalo, like Sal Capaccio and Jeremy White and Tyler Dunn, Syracuse alumni, watched you play in Syracuse, and now they're working in the media with you. You know, so I had on Sara Holland, your colleague at Channel 4 here, actually, at Imperial Pizza a couple weeks ago. And one of the things we talked about, Sara, it was a very good softball player. She played D1 softball at University at Buffalo. You obviously played football at a high level at Syracuse University. Now you're covering sports, primarily football. Do you feel that because you played for a long time and at a certain level, then maybe it gives you a little bit of a different perspective on the athletes that you're covering, what they're going through, good and bad? Because to some extent, at least, you've experienced that. You have probably, you've experienced the highs. You've won state titles. You've played college football. I'm sure throughout your career, you've experienced plenty of lows as well. Those low moments, those bad losses. You might have made a mistake or something on the field, and you kind of got to own up to it in a way with the media. You know what I mean? And now you are the media. But do you feel like you playing and being an athlete for as long as you were kind of gives you a little bit of a more unique perspective than somebody who didn't?
I think it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, I do think it's very beneficial to somewhat relate. I'm not going to say all the way relate because I didn't play at the NFL level, but to somewhat relate to what's going on out there. Like, hey guys, like I know what it's like to get beat over the top for a touchdown, and that's
right.
that really hurts. And like, I know what it looks like, that it may look like Tre'Davious White was the closest player to that receiver, but I promise you it wasn't his fault. And I understand what he's going through, and knowing that the 60,000 people in the field, in the stadium, think it's his fault, and he knows it's not, but he got to keep his composure because he knows he's on TV.
Sure.
But then on the other hand, though, it took me a while, and I'm still going through it, learning that you still have a job to do to report and be, I don't want to say critical all the time, but to report and be critical of what's going on out the field, because at times it was tough for me to do that. I was like, nah, like I'm trying to be sympathetic to the player, but I'm in a new lane now. I'm in the sports broadcasting industry, and it is my job to report. It is my job to be critical. So for a while, it was kind of difficult for me to do that. And I think most athletes can kind of relate to that to a bit, because you're to a certain extent, because you're like, man, those were my colleagues literally a year ago. Like, those are the guys that I was friends with. I have friends on the Buffalo Bills that I know from college. So it's like, that was difficult at first. So it's a double-edged sword, but I'll take the blessing 10 times out of 10.
When did you first start with media? Okay, so you go to Syracuse, again, a renowned journalism school, and you just admitted you didn't know shit about journalism. You were going there to play some football.
Yeah.
All right, well, eventually you're doing what you're doing now. What was your first experience while you were at Syracuse that maybe give you an inkling that this is something that you're ultimately going to end up doing?
So I did my 4 years at Syracuse, played ball there all 4 years, political science major. So I'm training for the NFL draft, things of that nature, getting a call in that way. COVID hits, boom. So any UDFAs that year, undrafted guys, COVID really kind of crushed your dreams.
Yeah.
Don't know what to do at that point. Like, hey, I'm not about to go law school or nothing like that. Like, that's expensive. So then I reach out to our athletic director, John Wildhack, who actually had ties at ESPN at the time. I believe he was a VP. He was high up over there at ESPN, and reached out to him and put in a good word for the Newhouse program. Everyone on campus knew I liked to talk. I was like, oh, man, this dude will never be quiet. He never will shut up in the locker room, anything of that nature. Feel like we're working that way. I'm like, sure, I'll give my hand at sports broadcasting, sports media. I like Stuart Scott anyways. Why not? And got into the program by the grace of God, and it all worked out. So I guess that 2020 summer, got into the program, did my 1 year, and ended up being one of the greatest blessings in my life.
I say this in the most complimentary way imaginable. You're natural at this shit, man. Wow. So you go to Syracuse and you weren't even the school the news team or anything like that. So you really weren't even experienced in front of the camera while you were going to school.
No, but what's funny about Syracuse, and this is for anyone that's there, Newhouse might as well be like right below athletics. Like, yeah, you got the football and basketball team. I promise you the Newhouse kids think they're on the same exact level as the athletes. So it wasn't like I had no idea the program existed, but I didn't want anything to do with it. I'm here to play football. I'm the next Deion Sanders. What do you tell me I'm going to be in front? I'm going to be in, you feel me? I'm playing. Y'all going to be talking about me. Clearly wasn't good enough. It didn't work out that way. But I was aware of the program, but it was not any of my desires my first 4 years on campus.
So you're an extroverted kid growing up.
Yeah.
I could tell.
Yeah.
Again, complimentary. It's not an insult. I could tell. All right, so talk about how the opportunity came about for you to go to Rochester and work at, it was News Channel 8 in Rochester. Dad Brown, who, by the way, has spoken multiple times very, very highly about you. But talk about how that opportunity came about for you to get a chance to kind of break into this business, so to speak.
Yeah, so during that program at Newhouse, the final capstone was to take a training camp type of internship. It was actually here at WIVB here in Buffalo. So I did my 1 month here. Now, it was during COVID, so I really didn't get to meet the team as much as I liked.
Right.
I wasn't able to do anything with the training camp, but I did stand-ups right in front of Highmark Stadium, was out there almost every other day. And through that little reel I put together over the 1 month period, Josh Reed put in a good word, sent it out to Thad. Thad said, whatever he said, I guess the kid looks good enough, whatever. By the grace of God, they chose me and hired me. And that's how I ended up in Rochester. It was everything happened so fast. I ended up telling my parents, like, hey, man, if I don't get a job right away, I'm going to just go DoorDash or something. And like a week later, Thad calls.
That's crazy. Again, in a good way. This is all complimentary. Talk about the process of getting comfortable. Was there a process for you? Now, I'm asking this legitimately. Was there even a process for you getting comfortable being in front of a camera and talking where who knows how many people are actually watching what you have to say?
Man, that was a difficult process. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, it is one thing being an extroverted kid and wanting to be the center of attention at every single family gathering. Like, hey, like, I'm doing the dance moves. Everyone look at me. Like, that was me as the kid, right? It's a totally different ball game when that red light is under the camera right there and it's rolling and you're like, oh, this is for real. Like, the public can see this, not just mom and pops. Like, grandma not seeing, like, this is more than just grandma now. And it was a lot different. And then also, truthfully, a big adjustment that I had, I struggle with trying to blend the professional side of the business and also my personality. Like, once again, growing up, I looked up to Stuart Scott, but a lot of the mentors that I saw in the space by the time I got to a 22, 21, like 22, 23 on ESPN, SportsCenter, things of that nature, were more of the professional side. They weren't saying Pookie and Ray Ray and all that type of stuff that Stu was saying on TV.
Right.
So I was like, man, all right, I guess I got to fit into that box of just like, that's how I talk on TV. And then Thad got me more comfortable in the space. AJ Feldman, my coworker over there, shout out to him as well. They slow played it with me. They allowed me to be myself. And I would say it took me about 6 months to truly get comfortable talking in front of a camera and looking into it because it wasn't an easy process at all.
I'm sure that's a process. And also it would probably be a process when you start covering a major professional sport. Talk about that a little bit. Like when you're in a locker room or you're at the podium when Brandon Beane or Sean McDermott or Josh Allen, whoever it is, maybe speaking. Just the process. And again, being an athlete maybe it's a little bit different for you because you've been an athlete. But what was that process like? Just getting used to talking to people for content, for stories and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think some other fellow sports media people can attest to this. I wasn't scared of, like, when I first started, any of the coaches or general managers or players, what they had to say. I was more scared of my fellow colleagues if they thought my question was dumb. Like, that's how I felt for the longest time. I didn't ask a question for God knows how long. I'm like, uh-oh, person next to me is going to think this is a dumb question. I'm not going to say nothing today. I'm just going to take his content.
Yeah.
So, like, it took me, once again, another 6 months to another year to get comfortable even doing that. But now, like, I'm at the point where, hey, man, if they think it's dumb, oh, well, they've asked dumb questions before, too. Like, we're all human in this space. So I understand. I will say the one perspective that I have as a former athlete, Josh Allen and these former players, they're just like us. Like, they literally are. They just are really darn talented at a game, at a football, at a sport. And it allows them to be on a different platform and different visibility. But they're just like us. So, I mean, they'll have bad days just like us. They don't want to talk to it. It is what it is. So I think that's one perspective that I have gained for sure.
We are here at Imperial Pizza, close to 30 honey mustard barbecue and Cajun medium wings later with my guest, brand new Channel 4 sports reporter and anchor, Carl Jones. All right, so now you're here. You're in Buffalo. You're here with me at Imperial Pizza. Tell us about the process and how the opportunity came about for you to elevate going from Rochester to where you are now here at Channel 4.
Yeah, so I was in Rochester for about 2 years and 9-10 months. I'm not really good on the dates and whatever that good type of stuff. A little less than 3 years. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
And there was an opening here, and Josh Reed reached out to me. We're within the same umbrella company, so it was an easy transfer for me to go from Rochester to Buffalo.
Sure.
Usually you think over it a couple of days or whatever. I talked to my mom and pops, my girlfriend, and I was like, should I do it? And they're like, why didn't you call him back? I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought I was being genuine here. All right, cool, whatever. So I ended up calling Josh back and put everything in motion, and that's kind of how I ended up being here. Once again, like, my journey is unique, and I'm forever blessed and grateful that it's worked out the way that it has, because I know a lot of people ask, like, hey, like, what are the steps that you take? And I'm like, listen, my steps are very unique to me. It's my journey, and I will help you out in every way that I can, but I don't know who has been looking over my shoulder to help me get here, but whatever they've done, I'm very grateful for it. So that's kind of how I got here, and I'm here today.
A lot of people, you know, some of the advantage that you have, even though you're living now in Buffalo, you're going from Rochester to Buffalo, which is a move, but you've had the opportunity to get to know some of the people now that you are working with here in Buffalo. Obviously, the people, of course, you know, in Rochester. One of the things that resonated with me when we were having our pre-podcast conversation, an advantage for you is that you don't have to start over. Forget about your colleagues for a second. The public relations, the media relations staff, say with the Buffalo Bills, already knowing them and having dealt with them in the past, that's a pretty big advantage to have as well.
Yeah, it's the comfortability factor of knowing the PR staff, like, hey, I need a player this day. It's a little bit different when you ask that to a new team, because they're like, kind of stories are you going with here? What angles are you taking with here? Or what type of journalist are you? And things of that nature. And they know who I am. So they're like, all right, this is where he's coming from. He's not doing anything malicious. These are the type of stories that he would go towards and things of that nature. So that's very beneficial, because this is a relationships business at the end of the day. And the connections that you make will end up generating the content that you create. So that's been a huge benefit that I didn't really think about until a couple of days ago.
Now, at this point in your career, still relatively young, you know, starting to just feel your way into the business here as a living, what have been some of the things you've enjoyed most, and what have been, I don't want to say things you've enjoyed least, because I'm sure you're just enjoying your life right now. Like, what are a couple of the most, like, challenging parts about doing this for a living?
Well, I would say the best part is the fact that I get to do what I love, and I know that as an adult, you make sacrifices in the career choices that we make, and I'm well aware of that. But I truly enjoy talking sports. Like, I'm not kidding when I say I was the kid in the living room, like, hey, all right, let me give you a little game recap of what happened on that Browns game right behind us. They lost, but let me tell you how they did it. Or, like, let me talk about this LeBron triple-double. And so that was truly me. And the fact that I'm blessed enough to do it with a suit and tie on and TV and talk to an entire local audience, that never gets old to me. Like, it's truly, like, that 6-year-old kid who was doing that, like, he will be in awe to know that this is how it turned out. The challenging side, though, I would say the hours to a certain extent, in terms of I can't watch some of my favorite teams when I want to anymore, because I have a job to do. Like, my favorite NFL team has to be put on the back burner. I have to watch them on YouTube the next day. Or, like, hey, I can't watch my Cavs whenever I want. Or to a certain extent, last year, couldn't watch Ohio State or even Syracuse at times. So once again, I'm not complaining about that. It is what it is. But that is one thing where, like, yeah, Ohio State's not getting watched unless the timing works out to a T. Because as a kid, my schedule got wiped out for Ohio State. Ohio State's first, figure out everything else after that.
What is your initial, and this is very initial, early thoughts on Buffalo? Again, you're just getting there. You're just getting settled in right now. So you haven't really had an opportunity to see a lot, to go do a lot of things. And before you know it, training camp's coming. So who the hell knows when you're going to get that chance? But, like, what are, like, your initial thoughts right now on being here in Buffalo?
The food. How much time you got on that? The food,
Yeah.
the food has been amazing, man. That's the one thing that I was told when I was applying here, and I've been on I-90 my whole life: Cleveland, Syracuse,
Yeah.
Rochester, and now Buffalo. And growing up, that was the one thing about I-90, especially towards the eastern part, where they're like, "Hey, man, you go east, Buffalo got some good food, especially them wings and pizza." And the pizza has lived up to the hype. Obviously, here at Imperial Pizza, the wings were really good. So that is the one thing that I've taken note of. I haven't been able to do much else. It's either set up my house or eat and go to work. I found some time to work out, but that's nothing unique to Buffalo. So I would say the food first and foremost. My friends visiting. Hey, forget going out. I got some food places I got to take y'all.
And you're gonna definitely find a lot more. I kind of feel like food here, I took it for granted, and I never realized it until I left. So I born and raised in Buffalo, and like I said, in 2016, I moved to Florida for 5 years with my family. And during that time, I was in Florida. And if you like seafood, crab, stuff like that, it's great. But I'm not more of a pizza wings type guy, and it sucked in Florida. And it's when I started coming back, I'm like, oh my God, this is so much better than anything I've ever had. It is the food, and that is definitely what Buffalo is most known for. Maybe second are the Bills, a team that you're going to be spending a lot of time covering here at Channel 4. Let's briefly, before we wrap up with what I like to call a fun fact finale. And by the way, I did not tell you any of these questions, so you're going to be answering these in real time. I didn't give them to you ahead of time, kind of like I did with Sara Holland, but don't tell people that I said that with Sara. Actually, I do that with most people. But anyway, no, on a serious note here. So Bills camp is opening in a couple weeks. And one thing we've been talking a lot about on the show is Von Miller. And, stories are out. I think the headline kind of inflated what he was about, him being angry that he came back too early, because he was also saying that he was going to be ready for week one, or that he was hoping to be. Anyway, long story short, whatever. Bottom line is this: he was not the same player last year, regardless of whose fault it was. He came back too early. He was a shell of himself, showed a little bit of signs of life in the playoffs, but has looked really good in the offseason. We've seen a lot of clips. He should be all the way back healthy. How important is Von Miller, even at his age right now, considering that the Bills didn't do a lot at defensive end this offseason, to this defense's success after losing Leonard Floyd?
I think he's the most important piece, to be quite frankly with you. Now, when you think about the playoffs, it's about the Jimmies and Joes, especially what I like to frame the dudes.
Yeah.
Like in the playoffs, everyone's talented. But can your dudes rise to the occasion and make one or two plays to win you the game? Like when you think about the Chiefs game here in Buffalo during the playoffs, just the one Chris Jones play where he pushes Deion Dawkins back into Josh Allen. Just one play. All you need is one play.
Yeah.
And your dudes are the players who can do that. Coaching staff didn't draw that up. Coaching staff didn't give him the grace of God and push him that hard.
Right.
Like that was all. So the Chiefs had Trent McDuffie, who was able to make plays like that last year, L'Jarius Sneed, Chris Jones. So you just need dudes. And obviously the Bills have a phenomenal one in Josh Allen on the offensive side of the ball. Matt Milano is a dude, but they didn't have him last year. So I would say you need one of those guys who can be the closer that they brought him in to be. He is very, very important to their success going forward.
God, I love that take, because, man, I've talked about that so much. You are so right. Look, I'm not going to say Josh Allen's better than Patrick Mahomes. I'm not going there.
Right.
But what I will say is Josh Allen has, with the exception of the 2022 Cincinnati game where he played lousy when they lost, Josh Allen has played well enough for his team to win every game. And in some games, he's been spectacular. But even at his worst, he's played well enough. And let's just say you call the play a stalemate between the two quarterbacks. To me, what has come down to the last couple of years with the Bills and the Chiefs, to your point, are star players, secondary star players, maybe we'll call them, Chris Jones and Travis Kelce, who did nothing for 7 weeks near the end of the season last year, and then all of a sudden wakes up and says, oh, it's the playoffs, I'm going to start mattering, which he quite literally did. But those guys step up and they make plays in the biggest games. Conversely, with the Buffalo Bills, outside of Josh Allen, like you said, Matt Milano, who was hurt or didn't play, guys like Ed Oliver and Stephon Diggs and Von Miller coming off injury. I'm not going to say they played lousy, but they didn't make those dude plays that you're kind of referring to. To me, that's the difference between the Bills and the Chiefs more than anything else.
Yes, 100%. Like Ed Oliver had a fantastic year last year. But in the playoffs, when they needed him to be that Chris Jones, to be that
Right.
Quentin Williams, or that obviously no one's Aaron Donald, but that elite level defensive pass rusher where you just need one or two plays to change the game. You don't need to be a consistent terror the entire game. Just one or two plays, whether it might not even show up in the stat sheet because that Chris Jones play didn't show up in the stat sheet, but it ended up being the play of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, so we both agree Von Miller is going to be very important. How good he is going to go a long way towards determining how good the Bills defense will be when it matters.
Yes.
I think even if he does nothing they'll be fine in the regular season. But we're, again, to your point, the big games, the big moments of playoffs, we both agree he matters a lot. That said, what's your level of confidence? And you'll get a lot more up close and personal look at him starting in a couple weeks. You'll probably have maybe a different opinion in a couple weeks. But as things stand right now, what is your level of confidence in Von Miller?
I would say a 5. Like, on one hand, this is a what have you seen from me lately business. And what we saw lately wasn't Hall of Fame Von Miller. It was a guy who was still a little, at least from our perspective, wasn't as confident in his body as he's looked in the past. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, superhuman type players and freak athletic guys, those guys tend to be those guys. Like, they tend to bounce back in that regard. So that's the only reason why my confidence level isn't any lower. Because, like, on one hand, I'm like, he could just bounce back and be that guy because ACL recovery isn't the same for everyone. I know as a former player, being in the locker room with those guys and going through rehab, some guys, they were back after 9 months in themselves. Some guys, it was a legit 2-year process because your body says one thing. The doctor can tell you that your body and your knee is fine, but your mental is the other thing because that's what really separates the athletes on the field. Is the mental side of the game. And if you're not confident in your knee out there, I don't care who you are, you're not going to be yourself. So I'll give him about a 5.
Are you, as somebody who's been in the media now, and again, you're new to Buffalo, but you're not new to covering the Bills. Were you surprised that they traded Stephon Diggs when they did in April?
Yes, because I felt as if the cap hit, which I believe is around 30, if I'm not mistaken, was a little too steep to do so. But when then you look at the totality of the offseason, it makes sense. I'm not saying that I agree with it, but it makes sense. But in the moment, I was just as shocked as anyone else because I was on the same train of, man, that cap hit is too steep. You're not going to throw $30 million dead cap during Josh Allen's prime. Like, that wouldn't make too much sense, at least without a succession plan that was obvious. And I know they did get Keon Coleman, the first pick this year, but it didn't make too much sense in that moment. But you look at totality of the offseason, I see where Brandon Beane is coming from.
From a national perspective, a lot of national people, if you just glance over this team, they're going to conclude that it's not as good anymore, that they're due to take a step back. And one of the reasons, again, just glancing, you lose Trey White, you lose Jordan Poyer, very likely Micah Hyde. You already lost Stephon Diggs, Mitch Morse, Leonard Floyd, who nobody talks about. I mean, this is a dude who had 10.5 sacks, and nobody even mentions him. I mean, he was one of the better players on the team last season. But anyway, they lose a lot of guys, and they sign plenty of guys, but just not guys who are as well known as some of the guys that I just mentioned. So I get it. If you glance over the team, it's really easy to conclude that. But as somebody who's a little more entrenched in this team, how do you feel about this team right now? Are the national people, do you think they're right? Like, is this a team right now do you think is due to take a step back, or do they still have enough talent, established talent, like with Josh Allen and Matt Milano, Ed Oliver, and young ascending players still? Guys who have not hit their ceiling, like Bernard and Benford, and maybe still guys like Spencer Brown and James Cook, et cetera, Khalil Shakir, that you still have confidence in this team, that they're still the team that should be talked about as the best, at least in this division.
Yeah, I still have confidence that they're a team that can make it to the playoffs and go on a run. I think the margin for error is a tad smaller for the reason that I alluded to in the previous question about Von Miller, because I don't know how many dudes they have at the moment when it matters in January. But, like, I don't know why this couldn't be an 11, 12-win team again, just based off the fact that the coaching, especially on the defensive side of the ball, in the regular season at least, has always been great in the defensive side of the ball. I know they dealt with the injuries last year, and they went through a nasty rut for a while, but then once they were able to kind of get through those nasty waters a bit, they were able to shine like the last 7 weeks of the season, defensively especially. So I think that they'll be able to be fine on that side of the ball. I think offensively it'll be a little rough to start, but I think as long as you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, those guys tend to figure things out. Like, I know that there are a lot of unknowns, and there's a reason to be uneasy about the offensive side of the ball. But how many times do top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the game miss the playoffs? I know Drew Brees did it a few times, but I don't think those Saints teams were as good as these Bills teams. Like, they don't tend to miss the playoffs. So that's the reason why I still think this is a team that can make it to at least the divisional round. The margin for error they're going to run is a little smaller, I'd say, because you don't have that dude on. But in the National Football League, you just need to get hot for 4 games. So I'm not going to put any ceiling on the team. The margin for error is a tad smaller, though.
I like where you're going with the dudes analogy, and I got 2. I'm going to throw at you right now.
Yeah.
They're not dudes now, but do they have the ceiling to be? One of them is Greg Rizzo, who's been good at times, really good, not great. He's also played over the last couple of years through some injuries. He hasn't missed games, but he's been less effective, less than 100%. Is his ceiling pretty much what we've seen, a good to really good player, or does he have that dude ceiling?
I don't know if he has that dude ceiling, because those guys on the edge tend to be freak of natures. Now, he is a freak. I mean, he's like 6'7", 260. Like, he is a freak in his own way. But when I think of those guys off the edge, whether it's the Myles Garretts of the world, the Micah Parsons, Max Crosby, TJ Watts, those guys are kind of their own tier of player. And I don't know if he possesses that type of ceiling. I still think he can be a really darn good player. I just don't know if his passion, because I think he can be a really good all-around defensive end. I truly do think that his measurables, and he's always a superb run defender. Don't know if he possesses the pass rushing chops to ever be in that top 8-ish range, but he clearly has the physical attributes and maybe ascend to that one day.
When we're talking about dudes here, I guess I got to preface this. Let me ask you a question. When we say dudes, does that mean somebody who you think that you could have confidence in when it matters, and it's a divisional round against the Chiefs or the Bengals, Houston, whoever it may be? Fourth quarter, got to make a play. He's going to make that play. He might not be a guy who lights the world on fire during the regular season, but he's going to make it when it matters most. Can I throw a surprise name out at you?
I'm all
Maybe
ears.
a ceiling, at least, to be a dude, Khalil Shakir. There's something about this guy, this dude, that I really like. When he had an opportunity last year, I thought he shined. He caught everything. He got open. He made big plays. And I mean, made some big plays. I think a lot of people, maybe especially around the league, maybe not so much in Buffalo, but I think a lot of people around the league sleep on this guy. I feel like he's kind of got at least like dude potential.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment to make. I mean, think of Julian Edelman in New England all those years. No one would have ever called him a top 5 or 10 receiver, but when it mattered in the postseason, that dude ended up got all the darn postseason records as a receiver. So, I mean, that's a great way to put it. I mean, the Bills are at the point right now where I'm not going to say no one cares what they do from September to December, but you kind of know what you're going to get. They're going to get you 10, 11 wins in a probable playoff bid. You're more concerned with what they do in the postseason. Until this point, Khalil Shakir has shown you he can be that player. Well, yeah, Julian Edelman was never a top 5 receiver, but no one was confident guarding him in the postseason, I'll tell you that.
If it's 3rd and 8, you got to move the chains and put a game away. You're going to Julian Edelman, and he's that dude because you just knew he was going to make that play. I kind of feel like Khalil Shakir is cut from the same cloth. That's just, I don't know, my gut feeling, my hunch. One more Bills question. Then I want to wrap up with a fun fact finale. So we're getting ready for camp. You're going to go back to Rochester, spend some time there, place you're obviously very familiar with. What are maybe 1, maybe 2 Bills camp storylines, big or small, that you're looking forward to maybe covering and seeing how things unfold?
Well, the obvious one is the receiver group. I think that's the one where everyone wants to know how it's going to shake out for the top 3 guys. I mean, on paper, you would probably say Keon, Khalil Shakir, and Curtis Samuel, but nobody has put pads on yet, so we'll see how that turns out. Whether that's a Chase Claypool, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Mac Hollins, KJ Hamler, Andy Isabella. I can go down the line. Tyrell Shavers. There are many players who can step up and make plays at Fisher later this month. So that's one storyline. How does that work out? Who lines up where? I know we aren't, as the media, allowed to say certain things on who's allowed to line up where and first and second string.
So stupid.
But from my own 2 eyes, I'll be able to make that assessment and see how it shakes out. And then also, I think an talked about storyline with this team is the depth at cornerback. And I know I'm biased. I play cornerback, so you're always going to get my perspective on the secondary. Sorry about it. Not sorry. But how do they feel about their depth at corner? Because I think right now they're really hopeful that Kyer Elam can be that third cornerback.
Yeah.
And without John Butler, who maybe wasn't the biggest fan of Kyer in his game and things of that nature, with a new fresh set of eyes to coach him up, they're hopeful that he can take that next step. And if he's that third corner, I think they're happy. But if he struggles in camp, do they hit the veteran trade market for a guy, or do they, hit free agency and see if they can get a guy in that regard? Because that is a position that they haven't really had to worry about with Dane Jackson there over the past few years, and Levi Wallace before that. So that is something that I'm always looking at cornerbacks, former DB. Sorry about it. But that is I have a legit reason this time to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And look, wide receivers, there's potential with some of these unheralded guys. Matt Collins was good with the Raiders a couple of years ago. MVS has stepped his game up in the playoffs. I'm certainly not going to count on Chase Claypool, but maybe it's unfair to write him off. And I was kind of critical, joking around mostly with our guy Matt Marino, because he was writing up how good he looked in OTAs with a jersey and shorts on, and I'm laughing at it. But you know what? Give the guy an opportunity, see what he'll do in camp. Which, by the way, related, kind of how I first sort of discovered you was you guys were talking Chase Claypool. You were on Matt Marino's Shout podcast, and I saw you on there for some. Like, this dude knows what he's talking about.
The Chase Claypool thing is unique. I played against him, so I can't talk down about him too much because he gave the business to us in college. Yeah, good player. Really good player. But no, he a physical freak, and this is maybe his last dance, so hopefully he'll be able to figure things out here in Buffalo.
By the way, with all due respect to you and Cuse, little taboo to say around these parts, but I'm a Notre Dame dude, so
here we go.
I was kind of glad that he gave it to you guys. So.
Look, Notre Dame gave it to me twice. Once at MetLife and then once at Yankee Stadium. First game was close. I was a freshman. I was happy. Second game, it was like 25 degrees. I just wanted to go home. That was bad. Everything was bad about it. Everything. Miles Borkin, Chase Claypool, Dexter with Ian Book. It was not fun. Nothing about it was fun at all.
Yeah, and I can't even bust on you about the winners here that you're going to be going to in Buffalo because, again, you're in Rochester, Ohio. You're not new to it. You might see a little bit more snow than you're used to.
Right.
But aside from that, you're used to the elements. All right, we're going to wrap up with the fun fact finale. I'm going to ask you some random questions, not a lot of deep thought, whatever, like the first thing that kind of pops in your mind, that'll be your answer. That's how we're going to end. Let's start with, I'm going to make this a little bit harder for you. I'm going to say favorite athlete, but you're disqualified from saying LeBron.
Steph Curry. I know, that's wild.
Wow.
How can I pick a player who was the rival of LeBron for like 5 years? Steph Curry for the sole factor of that 07 March Madness run. There was nothing comparable to that for me as a kid. Seeing him what he did at Davidson, little old Davidson making it all the way to the Elite Eight. I bought his jersey right after that. I was a big fan, and I was so mad that they linked up for like 4 years in a row. I'm like, come on, like this is not how it's supposed to work out. Don't worry, I still rooted for Cleveland, but was kind of happy when Steph was able to win a couple of times. But yeah, I would say Steph.
This next one, I normally wouldn't even care what your answer was, but I am a little bit intrigued because you are an athlete. Obviously, take care of yourself. You're in good shape. So I'm wondering, is it crappy or is it something good? What's like your go-to late night snack? Like, what's your favorite, like your snack?
Ooh, late night snack. Oh, DiGiorno's pizza. Without a doubt. That was my go-to in college. Listen, Tops was right down the road. Tops didn't close. It was 24 hours.
Yeah.
Go right down to Tops, buy me a little DiGiorno's pizza. I accidentally burned the house on a couple times. I'm sorry, roommates. Give me a little cup of ranch. Can't forget that from Tops too. And I used to just snack. I'm sorry. I could never put weight on in college. That was my biggest issue. I was stuck at 185 like all 4 years. Coaches got mad. Hey, man, you want to play safety? Well, you can't do it at 185. I'm trying with the DiGiorno's pizza. It wasn't working, but DiGiorno's without a doubt.
That's a good choice. By the way, you're not leaving here without a slice of Imperial Pizza because we only had wings before the show. What's your favorite place that you've ever visited? Whether it was a vacation, a family trip, a college football trip, wherever it may be. Like, what's your favorite place that you have visited?
It's a tie. I would say Florida State's first. As a kid, seeing the Seminole chant and seeing the horse and Osceola and Chief Osceola in person, that was unreal for me. Once again, I grew up in college football country in Ohio, so all of that stuff I look at things from a different perspective. And seeing that in person, playing down there twice, man, I was I was fangirling. It's pregame, and you're supposed to look the other way and not act like you're like intimidated. But I'm looking at the horse like, I'm like, oh man, I'm in heaven. And then I would probably say my other trip is once again college football related. Playing at Clemson, Trevor Lawrence's first start. The atmosphere down there, it was a sold out crowd, 90,000.
Wow.
And as a kid, you grow up and want to play sports for moments like that. And that was the game. Obviously, we led for 57 minutes and then blew up the lead in the last 3. But that was truly a moment that I'll never forget.
Who was your first that you can remember celebrity crush?
Probably Beyonce. Yeah, it had to be Beyonce. Destiny's Child area. That was me. Beyonce for sure.
Fun, popular answer.
Yeah.
Speaking of fun, too, give everybody a fun fact about you. Something maybe a little bit quirky about you, whatever it may be, but a fun fact about you that some people, maybe even some people who know you somewhat, don't even know about you.
It's not too quirky, but like I'm a video game nerd, like bad. Like, I'm sorry, Aaliyah, my girlfriend. You're moving in with me now. You got to deal with it. I've been like that my whole life. Like, it got so bad that, not to dive into the weeds of how it happened too much, but I moved into the basement in 7th grade. Half of the reason was because I was too loud playing video games upstairs. So I had to go downstairs, and I fought too many times with my parents. It'd be like 3 a.m. I got school at, mind you, I had to bus to school. Carpool to school 3 hours away. So I had to wake up at 5. Again, I'm running on 2 hours of sleep because of the video games. I needed to play no matter the game. Call of Duty, any sports game, you name it, FIFA, baseball, football, basketball, you name it. I'm a video game nerd. It's bad. Like, I'm about to go play video games after we do this. I'm not gonna lie.
What is a movie that you have probably rewatched more than any other one?
Oh man, it would probably have to be Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, the second one, where Optimus dies and Sam stabs him with the whole thingy and wakes him back up. I would say Transformers, the second one.
Okay, what is a bad habit of yours that you kind of wish you didn't have? And besides being a video game junkie, what is up with you football players loving video games so much too?
My excuse now is that I'm able to communicate with my friends through the video games. That's my way.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
Bad habit of mine, I would probably say, I can't wake up. I can't. I'm the worst. I sleep through alarms. Now, if it's work related, I've never been late to work and miss a workout or football. But like, if I don't have, like, no one's telling me I got to be there,
you're not getting up. You don't have to.
No. I'm getting my 8 hours of sleep. Believe that.
All right, 3 more questions here. All right, so we're sitting here right now. We're taping this show at Imperial Pizza. Let's just, for the sake of discussion, say they got some karaoke going on right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm able to have a couple beers, whatever. We don't even have to take a couple beers, but I'm convincing you to get up there and sing a song, sing something that you think that people are going to get into, whether it's like a party song that's going to get them going, or maybe a slow jam that's going to make somebody want to text their girl and say, I miss you, whatever it may be. Like, what would be in your mind, if you have one, if not, create one, what would be your go-to, like, karaoke jam?
I'm cheating again. I got 2 of them. My Girl Temptations. I grew up on that song.
Good.
Pops love that song, and I can sing that one back to front. Another one's a new one. It's Morgan Wallen's song, Broadway Girls. I've been hearing about that one for the past couple of years now. And I've been in my Broadway Girls era. Like, listen, so those 2 right there, I would karaoke for sure.
All right, let me ask you this too, kind of like a little bit of a bonus question. So I said, in your mind, you're a good karaoke singer. I'll get you up there. In real life, if there was karaoke going up, are you the kind of person who will go up there and sing karaoke? I'm not.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like I told you, as a kid, if there was a party going on, I was the center of attention. Like, now, I've grown out of that. Obviously, the older I got, I'm not trying to do that. But like, if I get a couple drinks in me and I feeling myself, 8-year-old CJ will come out again for sure.
All right, this is a little bit of an unfair question because you're younger and you're just starting to really get entrenched in your career. But obviously, you wanted to play football and you played it all the way up into a D1 level. You want to be in sports media. That's what you're doing right now. But just for fun, although I suppose it wouldn't be fun, and then wasn't working out for you and you weren't going to be doing this, what is something else that you might want to pursue in your life? I
really enjoyed political science, the criminal justice career I took path I took in college. Like I truly enjoyed like the mock stuff we did with law and things of that nature. That was something I always had a passion for. So don't know if I ever go to law school. Like that's not. I'm done with school. Did 5 years of it. I'm good. But something criminal justice related, whether it's an initiative, a group, something to help people out, especially lower income people who are disenfranchised and don't really have the resources to help to reach out and get help. Something in that path.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right, the traditional final question here: dinner with 3 people. So you could have 3 people over to your brand new apartment here, and you move in the Buffalo. It could be a celebrity, an athlete, a historical figure, dead or alive.
Okay.
So it could be any era, anytime, but 3 people that you'd like to sit down, have a bite with, maybe a drink with, chop it up, tell stories, listen to stories, whatever it may be. But any 3 people you could have at your dinner table. Who you got?
We're going Jesus for sure.
Okay.
Jesus at the head of the table, obviously. We're gonna have
Head of the table.
yeah, you like that. Then we're gonna have LeBron over there, LeBron across from me, and then we're gonna have Jesus, LeBron. We'll go with, you know what? Michael Jackson will be a unique one. He got some stories that I think I need to hear, and I don't know if he want to tell them in front of Jesus. So when Jesus goes to the bathroom, we'll listen to Mike's story. So I will say them 3 for sure.
You know, a lot of people I like to debate LeBron and MJ with, but I ain't doing it with you.
I'll say this though. I'll say this about the whole MJ LeBron thingy. I am truly a passion, like a buff for history. So like, I am never going to trash Jordan. Like I'm never any historical, like, because I understand things are different, sports, all that good type of stuff. I especially am appreciative of that with football because the sports is different. Having said all that, my area code is 330. LeBron is from the 330. You do the math on who I think is better.
Yeah. I'll say this about both players. And I'm not choosing a side here, although I would choose Jordan. But I'll say this about both players. There's a handful of players in my life. And again, I'm older, man. I've been around. I watched Michael Jordan play throughout his prime. There's a handful of athletes just in sports, not even just basketball, where when they were at their best, when they're in their prime, if they're on TV, I'm watching them. Like I'm blowing off a date. I'm blowing off dinner. I'm doing. If I could do anything to watch that game, I'm watching it. And when Michael Jordan played, I watched him. When LeBron played with Cleveland all those years, even Miami, I watched him. You know, even early on with the Lakers, I watched him. So I'm an MJ guy, but the longevity of LeBron, what he's done, no one has ever played at a level that he's played at for as long as he's played at. He's still a top 10 player in the league last year, and he's like 70 years old, man.
It's unreal, man. Just once again, very grateful that I grew up in the era that I did and I was able to watch him play. I wasn't able to see Jordan. Jordan, of course, gave up, retired, whatever. No, I'm kidding. He retired the second time in 98, and I was born in 98, so I wasn't able to see him. So I'm grateful I was able to watch Bron.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, that's going to do it. I want to thank one more time Imperial Pizza here. 2 locations. We are at the South Buffalo location on Abbott Road. They also got a new location, 1655 Main Street. I say it all the time. This is like a utility knife when it comes to food. It's not even one specific thing. Whether it's wings or pizza, chicken fingers, subs, they got it all, and it's really top-notch here. So big thank you to Imperial Pizza. Big thank you to this guy, too. Carl Jones, Channel 4. You're going to do good stuff, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you do it, too, man.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, have a good weekend, and I'll be back with a brand new show on Monday. Talk to you then.